Okay, we are going. All right, cool. Yay. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on a general introduction to systematic reviews. My name is Jodie Heath. I am a scholarly communications and research support librarian. Clearly haven't put my teeth in today. So for the objectives of this session, we are going to be looking at describing what a systematic review is and how it differs from other review types. And we're going to explain the main stages of a systematic review process, looking at protocol and reporting. We're going to formulate a focused answerable review question by using frameworks that might be applicable to our particular area of study. We're going to identify the key considerations for designing a transparent and reproducible search strategy. We're going to recognise the importance of screening, quality appraisal and data extraction whilst minimising bias. And we're going to locate relevant guidance, checklists and support services that are available through the library and externally. Okay, there's very minimal participant interaction in this session, but I have included a small section here. So if you are already planning a systematic review, give me a thumbs up. If you are involved in one, give me a heart. Or if you're just curious, checking out what's going on, give me a clap, just so I can see where everyone's up to. Okay, but I'm just curious. Already involved, lovely. Fabulous. Always nice to know what people are up to. Okay, I will say I've got 49 slides and an hour to get through them, so I'm going to go what I can attempt to achieve a rapid pace. If there is any point at which you want me to slow down or go back over something, just say so in the chat or shout at me. More than welcome to go over things, but there's a lot of content, but I wanted to try and keep it to the hour, so we're gonna try our best. So for anyone who does not know what a systematic review is, a systematic review is a structured, comprehensive and transparent method of identifying, evaluating and synthesizing research evidence to answer a clearly defined question. Okay. So what is a systematic review? What does it look like? So we've got some key characteristics here. It's structured in that it follows a predefined and protocol-driven process. It's transparent, allowing methods, all methods are documented and reproducible. It's comprehensive. Its aims are to identify all the relevant evidence, published or unpublished. It is reproducible. Another researcher could repeat the process and obtain similar results. And it minimises bias through rigorous searching, screening and appraisal. So the real key thing with a systematic review is that it is systematic in its process. There are systems in place that we follow and we can report back on them and they can be repeated by others. And that's the real nice thing. So as opposed to, you know, cherry picking, just random selection, or, you know, going with the wind on an article that we think is useful, potentially it might be, the difference really comes in that systematic reviews have that systematic, reproducible, transparent approach to them. The reason this matters is because it enables us to provide a reliable summary of the current evidence base. So, of course, journal articles are constantly being churned out, created, drafted, new research is being discovered, and we need to be able to capture the current information that exists on a subject or topic, and we want to be able to present how we gathered that information, and we can use that to support evidence-informed decision making in things like research, more research, policy and practical applications. It enables us to help identify gaps or inconsistencies or future research needs. So we can see, okay, this area has been quite well studied, but actually this area could also be interesting and there's just not so much research on there. And it can be used by, and is often required by funders, professional bodies and guideline developers. So these bodies that are overarching a particular field will ask for a systematic review of the most recent research so that they can have an understanding of what the vibes are really. Where's the research going? What are the problems? What's the conversation going on? I always think about journal articles as a big party. Lots of gossip going on. You'd be like, Smith said what? Jones is doing what? It's a lot of gossip going on. So what we want to do is capture all of the different chatter and bring it together so that we can analyse all the different elements and consider them in relation to each other. Let me just have a cut. Okay. So how do systematic reviews compare to other reviews that you might have done? So for example, narrative reviews are really broad in their scope. They're heavy on description and typically quite exploratory. The methods may be informal or not even fully documented at all, and they're generally used and useful for providing background information or context to the research that we want to go on to do. They're not designed to be exhaustive or reproducible. Okay, they're generally broad and explanatory about why we think something is important before we jump into that next part of the conversation. Give me a thumbs up if you have heard of or have looked at or even done a scoping review, because these are still, still new to the party. Absolutely. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, I really like a scoping review. They've grown on me. At first I was like, I'm not sure. But it's really indicative of how information is being consumed, how the landscape of that information consumption is changing and adapting to the needs that we have as we progress forward in studies and researching specific subject areas. So a scoping review is intended to map the breadth and nature of a topic. So it's that sort of middle ground really between random selection and systematic selection. It's this idea of casting a wide net and just seeing what comes back through, which could be changeable, it could be emerging. It's kind of used to identify the key concepts, the different evidence types and the gaps that currently exist. There is an element of systematic process that is used to generate that information, but there's not so much a formal quality appraisal that is required. Again, lots of discussion going on about how we can best approach scoping reviews, and yeah, I like what I'm seeing, but it's still emerging, so there's not necessarily consistency across the board there. And it's most used when a topic is emerging or heterogeneous. So, with figuring things out, scoping reviews are really nice for that. Rapid reviews also sort of sit on the border, shall we say. It's a more streamlined systematic review method, which is used to meet time-sensitive needs. So the issue that we have quite often with systematic reviews is they are big activities. They take a lot of time. So a rapid review sort of approaches the systematic review from a more pragmatic perspective. So uses some shortcuts, for example, fewer databases or a single screener to speed up that process. But there is obviously a trade-off in that there's less comprehensiveness and certainty in those results due to the speed at which and the sort of bias that is naturally encountered with a single reviewer. So rapid reviews are a type of systematic review, but they don't necessarily have quite the same grandness to them because of the speed of approach that is taking place. So the question then is, when is a systematic review most appropriate? Really haven't put my teeth in today, guys. I do apologise. So it's suitable when you have a specific and focused and answerable question. We already know that there is sufficient existing literature available to synthesize. We need reliable and high quality evidence to inform the decisions. And the topic itself aligns with established systematic methodologies, for example, clinical effectiveness, quality synthesis, intervention effectiveness, policy questions. And of course, you have time and resources to follow the rigorous methods that are required. So it's not something that you would pick up lightly for the fun of it, perhaps. I mean, I do like me a keyword search, but even I don't want to do a systematic review on my own. But there are times, specifically in medical situations, where a systematic review really is the most appropriate. Situations when it might not be appropriate is when the topic is too broad, vague, or exploratory. Very little or no literature exists, so it is an emerging field. It's a topic that is, maybe interdisciplinary. We've not really had too much research into it. The review question itself is conceptual or theoretical rather than evidence-based. And you actually want a quick overview or background summary, in which case you probably want a narrative review, or you actually want to map the field before narrowing your focus. For example, you probably want a scoping review. And you don't have the time, resources, or team capacity to make the methodology feasible. Okay, so let's start to think about how do we do a systematic review? What are the stages? What are the processes? And I'm going to kind of go over this a couple of times in a few different angles, and hopefully that will make sense. Because I think one of the issues that we have with systematic reviews is it's all a bit non-contextual. There's nothing to touch. Back in the day, we could have actually touched the journals, but not nowadays. And I think that's one of the difficulties with systematic reviews. Okay, so briefly, a systematic review life cycle is we formulate the review question and the objectives. What would I like to find out? How will I know if I've met my criteria of finding out what I would like? We want to develop and register our protocol. So again, if we're doing this for a governing body or we want to publish the research, we want to be sharing our approach so that it can be vetted and approved and confirmed and is aligned with industry expectations. Then we can start looking at designing the search strategy. I would say this is the most important part of the process because the search strategy, if we can get that correct, then we can apply it to all of our different databases, simply, easily gather the data and move on. I'm getting ahead of myself. Next, we want to manage the search results and do some screening, remove any duplications, for example. We want to consider our critical appraisal and risk of bias assessment. How are we filtering this information? How are we comparing it with our colleagues, for example? Is there a discussion process in place for articles that we agree or disagree on? Then we can have a look at extracting the data and synthesizing the information, whether that's qualitative or quantitative. And then we can have a look at writing up the report and updating the review. It's so simple, really, when you say it like that. Okay. So one of the first things that we really need to do is to develop a focused review question. And typically that is led by a framework. Okay, so common frameworks include the PICO, the PEO, and the PS. The purpose of the frameworks is to help to provide and formulate a clear, focused, and answerable review question by breaking the question that we have up into the specific elements that we're interested in. What that will enable us to do is translate those key concepts into search terms for our databases and making that process a little bit easier. And it will also help ensure the transparency and consistency between the review question, the inclusion criteria, and the search strategy. We really want to be thinking about them at the very beginning of our process. They will help define the scope, the boundaries, and our eligibility criteria of the materials that we're going to be looking at. So getting a framework in place, one of the very first steps that we want to be doing. Depending on your area and interests, there's different frameworks that will be interesting to you. The PICO is quite useful for quantitative and clinical effectiveness areas. The elements of PICO are population, who is the focus of the review. So for example, that could be adults with chronic back pain. What is the intervention that we would like to have been done in the research? What is being tested or implemented? For example, a physiotherapy program. And then the comparison, what is being compared to? For example, standard care, a placebo, or no intervention. And of course, what is the outcome? What effects or changes are being measured? Is it a pain reduction or mobility improvement, for example? So by using that PICO framework, we can really break down who, what, where, when, why, all those elements that we need. PICO is commonly used for effectiveness questions, intervention comparisons, and clinical and health science topics. The strength really is that it's clear and structured in a way to define the intervention-based questions that typically occur in those areas, and it aligns well with quantitative study designs and meta-analysis, which, you know, they're popular in those areas. Next up, we have the PEO framework, which is qualitative or lived experience. And this is a bit shorter. So we're looking again at population. Who are the people or groups of interest? What is the exposure? What is the experience or situation or phenomenon being explored? And what is the outcome? What are the reported themes, experiences, or perceptions that have occurred that we would be interested in? It's commonly used for qualitative evidence, lived experience, perceptions or attitudes, or non-intervention topics, and is well suited for qualitative synthesis and thematic analysis, and helps target studies that capture perspectives rather than measurable effects. So I quite like that one as well. And then we have the PS framework, which is contextual and aimed at more exploratory questions. So again, population, who or what is the review focused on, and what is the situation, what is the issue, context, or setting being examined? So commonly used for exploratory or broad questions, emerging fields with diverse study designs, reviews focused on context, settings, or issues rather than interventions. And the strengths really are that they are flexible in structure for non-clinical, interdisciplinary, or focused policy-focused reviews, and are useful when outcomes are varied or undefined. So just out of curiosity, in the chat, let me know, are you a PICO, PEO, or PS kind of researcher? Where do you think your alignments would fall? And I'll just skip back through them for a second just so we can see. So we've got PICO, PEO, and PS. PICO being more quantitative and clinical effectiveness, and PEO, qualitative and lived experience, and the PS, which is contextual and exploratory. Yeah, spider's a good one. The same, man, I had to pick 3. Yeah, PICO's a popular one. Lovely, thanks guys. Okay, where are we? Okay, so choosing the right framework, as we've said, there are many frameworks. There are new ones emerging all the time, but basically it's a way of guiding your thinking about breaking down your question into the tangible assets that will be required for that later on keyword searching. So it's part of the process of understanding how do we describe issues and how can we consider those unique elements so that we can apply that to a program which is centered around keyword searching. Okay, so the visualization that I use when looking for articles is to think about it like shopping, because shopping is something that we all do, whether it's clothes shopping or food shopping or car shopping. What we need to do is consider the types of shops that are available to us. So the different databases are like different shops. And we need to understand that each shop has its unique features and filters and options, but they all offer the sort of same experience of going in, being able to find products and purchase them. Okay. And the thing what we're doing with a systematic review is understanding that yes, let's say clothing shops. Yes, there are different types of clothing shops that may have similar items, but not every shop carries the exact same product. So when we go looking, we want to be looking for all t-shirts, but then we can compare the differences that are offered between New Look and Adidas, for example. So we can apply the sort of naturalized skills that we have within a contextual world to the journal article environment, which feels a little bit more intangible and less contextual. So what we need to do when we are thinking about starting to do our search process is think about looking at the different shops that are available to us, the different databases. They will have a different range of products and materials, different subscriptions, different collections that are available. By going to different areas, different shops, different databases, we collate and complete a basket of all the different studies that might be of interest to us. And some shops are going to be more specialized, subject specific databases, while others are just large supermarkets that have a little bit of something for everyone, and we're only interested in a small section of it. So there's an argument to be had about breadth and specialism, particularly when we're considering which databases we want to include in our research. The big databases are great because they will have a broader scope, but it will typically mean more filtering. If we go too narrow, too specialist, we might miss out on interesting and important research, but there's certainly less filtering to go through. So it's about trying to find that balance when we're considering our shopping locations. So what we want to do in our initial search is add everything to our basket that we find. So we're going to go to the databases, anything that is applicable, we're going to pop it in our basket. And at this stage, what we're really doing is being hypersensitive. If it meets some or most of our criteria, we can pop it into the basket and we can filter it out later. So we're looking at collecting widely rather than precision at that initial scoping search stage. Next, once we've got everything in our basket from all of the different stores, what we want to do is start sorting through them. So we want to remove the duplicates that have come in. If I've gone to Asda and Sainsbury's and Tesco and bought all of the different types of crisps, there's a good chance Walker's is in there repeatedly. So what I want to do is remove the duplicate so that I only have that one brand of crisps so I can compare it individually against the other brands that are unique in those shops. Okay, so we can use tools such as RefWorks, EndNote or Zotero or other systems are available to help identify the duplicate products, keep one copy, clear out the rest, and ensure that our basket is tidy, accurate and ready for inspection. Hopefully that is clear. Lovely. Okay, so once you have cleared your duplicates, what you want to be doing is an initial screening process. So having a look at the title and having a look at the abstract and removing anything that doesn't fit your predetermined criteria. Okay, so this is quite a quick process. Does it not involve the population that you're interested in? No, thank you. Is it not got the intervention you're interested in? No, thank you. So you can filter through those individual records quite quickly before we then go on to the in-depth full text screening of examining the contents of the article in full. So really looking at the label of the clothing, for example, before we want to commit to it. Okay, so the real thing that I want to get across with a systematic review is that it really is about visiting multiple databases and gathering as much information as you can comprehensively, and then carefully sorting and checking the items before proceeding with that in-depth reading for your final review. If you can work through that process efficiently, it will make your reading of the final article much more satisfying. Yeah, hard work goes into finding and filtering and searching. Hopefully, then reading the full article isn't quite so arduous. For a common framework flowchart that is advised is the Prisma flowchart. And here you can see it follows that process. So we have an initial search of PubMed, SynHouse, Sports Direct, Web of Science, so the different shops that they think are going to have the products that they are interested in. They're going to have a run of that search through, exclude on basis of titles not being applicable, reviewed again for evaluation, so you can see the numbers of articles are dropping down now, excluded on the basis of the abstract, potentially appropriate for the studies, filtered through into excluded again, and studies included for this a meta-analysis and then cross-referenced, and they ended up with 11 articles. So it's really a filtering down process. We have a broad collection, and then at every stage we're removing things that are not applicable by using that framework to guide our thinking and process as we move forward. Simply put, search for stuff, deduplicate it, screen it, appraise it, and then synthesize the information. And again, when you say it like that, it sounds super easy, doesn't it, guys? I love talking about literature searching, but I cannot say that it is easy. It's hard, it's complex, journals are hard to read. People are doing funny titles nowadays, which is humorous, but not terribly helpful when it's doing a screening process, you know? Okay, I am whizzing through these slides, so if you do need me to slow down, let me know. I was really worried I was going to put too much content in and massively overrun, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so when we're searching for our studies, the principles of a systematic search are that high sensitivity, so capturing as much relevant evidence as possible, even if it increases the number of irrelevant results. We are looking, however, at precision. We want to retrieve fewer and more targeted results by narrowing the search. So when you're looking at that search string, you can have a scoping process where you play around with more key terms, which will broaden the net that you're looking at, or you can make it very precise, very few keywords that will limit naturally the number of returned articles. Okay. And what we're looking for, an effective systematic search balances that approach. Okay, so we want to consider our question and the sources of information that are available. If we know that we're doing a review in a heavily studied area, we might want to be more refined in how we plan our search strategy. Whereas if we know that this is, yes, there is enough articles for a systematic review, but it is still a bit early for, full massive synthesis of information, we might want to consider broadening out our search strategy for that widening of the net. Examples of places to search. Of course, you've got your subject databases such as Medline, Scivo, CINAHL, ERIC, etc. You might want to go somewhere a bit more multidisciplinary, maybe scope out the conversation on Scopus, or we have Web of Science here at Keele. There are trial registries, which can be an interesting place to see what's going on. And of course, you've got things like grey literature, reports, theses, guidelines, conference papers, emerging information that hasn't fully come through into white paper status yet. And a little bit of snowballing, citation searching, so going forwards and backwards in our reference lists. That can help us in that scoping stage of trying to understand what the conversation is, what keywords are being used. That all helps feed into the question that we will propose, and that will feed into the PICO framework. So building our search strategy, how do we do that? So what we want to do is start from the review question and identify its key concepts. So typically this looks, when I do it, into a spider diagram. So I have my question in the middle and I try and bring out the key concepts of the things that I'm trying to investigate. Again, kind of using that sort of PICO-esque framework? Is there a population that I'm interested in? Is there a particular intervention that I would like to investigate? That can help me build up the question. So it's a little bit iterative in that sort of process. Next, you want to be looking at, for each of those key concepts, creating a keyword list. So we're looking at any synonyms, we're looking at variant spellings, particularly if there's an American affiliation, shall we say. If the Americas are leading on any of the research, we might want to consider that in our search process. And if there are different terminologies used in different areas, so just a common example, again, in America, when they talk about open research, they refer to it as open sciences, but in the UK, open research is the more accepted term. And that's just a minor example of how different words can be used to talk about the same concepts and approaches. So it's really important that you have an awareness of that as well. So if we're visualizing this, we've got our question in the middle. Our different arms are our concepts, and then we have synonyms, contextual keywords, really jumping into the thesaurus and seeing what comes up if in relation to the concepts that we're interested in. Next, if we are again using something that is perhaps a bit more medical in nature, considering any specific category or subject headings, particularly things, you know, Mesh and Sinhal, they have specifically restricted taxonomical vocabularies, which we might want to include in our search so that we can map our search in and out of those databases that use subject-specific headings. There is no point using a search term or search string that doesn't include those headings if we want to go into those databases. So a thing to consider. We want to be then looking at how we can map those concepts together, those different keywords together, using the Boolean search terms, such as or, which broadens the scope. So or means more, and combines concepts, not excludes concepts. And we can think about limitations, okay, on design, language, year of production, etc. And all of these things will build up our methodology of how we did our search. Really useful to keep a record during this time. So from the start, here we have an example review question. What is the impact of gamification on student motivation in higher education? The three core concepts that I've pulled from that question are gamification, student motivation, and higher education context. So what I would want to do is look at what keywords are available to me and write them down, again, either in a big spider diagram, or if you're technical, jump into Excel and create a record that way. So here, gamification, we've got game-based learning, serious games, digital games, games mechanics, gameful design, student motivation, engagement, learner engagement, academic motivation, etc., etc. There's a really broad scope of English language analysis that goes into literature searching, which I think is very, very cool and very fun, and it changes over time. The example I often give here is how neurodivergence is the more modern term for things like autism spectrum and Asperger's. If I want to research this topic, I will need to have an awareness of the older terms because they were correct as of the time of publication, even if I wouldn't use them now. But I would want to use them in my search strategy so that I can gather that information and translate it for the needs that I have when I come to do my write-up. So yeah, English language is a, you know, ever emerging and evolving thing, and I think that's fun. But I would as a librarian, hey, you know, you've got to get your kicks somewhere. Okay, this I call the hidden step because it's not really written up in the systematic review process or the literature review process more generally. When we get to doing our write-up of our systematic review, we will just say, and here's the search string that I did. And you think, right, but how did you get there? How did you broaden it out and narrow it down? And how did you, figure out what the right pattern of keywords was in which, which brackets and where and which ands and which ors, and how did we iterate through that process? So it's a bit of a hidden step because we all know it's kind of going on, but because no one says it, it's always the bit that people struggle with the most. So my recommendation is to go into Excel and create a little chart for yourself with date, the database, the concept, the search strings, the filters, the retrieved results, were they relevant, any notes, and any active actions or revisions that you made. And then you can go through and test in a friendly database, for example, Library Search that we have here at Gill, the returned results of that search string. Okay, so let's say on the 15th I went to Scopus. The concept I was interested in was gamification, and I did gamification or game-based learning. Okay, so we're starting to use some of our Boolean strategies there to bring together the concepts. I applied some filters, I got 312 results, and they were relevant to what I'm interested in. And I can add some questions in there, and I might add an action or revision. And again, I can iterate through that process. So then I could run that same database search again with additional things that I've noticed, such as adding in serious games. And we can move through that process as we sort of scope out our search. And that's my one complaint with scoping literature review, is that it now confuses the scoping practice with the scoping review language. But yes, this is my biggest tip. Give me a thumbs up if this is something that you have done before, or if this is useful to you, or give me a comment. What do you think of this bit? Because I find it's the bit that most people struggle with. Mm. I'm pleased. Yeah, I think this is the bit that people, it's the quiet thing no one is saying out loud. But why not? Huzzah. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I always just say literally is like a science experiment. We add a little bit of this, we add a dash of that, we see what the outcome is. Is it in the direction that we're like, hoping it will go, or is it gone really weird? Why is adding in that phrase made it go in this direction? That's odd, but let's, investigate that. So there's a lot of scoping going on. Perfect. I'm so pleased. Okay. Right. So we've scoped our search, we've settled on a string that seems to bring back, enough results that are of a good enough quality that we think we can proceed. Obviously, understanding that we're doing high sensitivity, and when we go through that Prisma flow chart, we're going to naturally reduce and filter through and really refine it. So we still want a level of breadth but you don't want so many articles that you're like drowning and you would never get the review done in a million years. So there's that scoping element where we're trying to find that sweet spot with our process. Then we can start to go to the different databases that we think are going to be applicable to us. So the shops that we think have the products that we want, and we want to document that process. Okay, and what this enables others to do is to replicate our search, so they know what search string was used and on what databases with what limiters, and it's reproducible and it's transparent, and we can move forward with sharing our results. So we want to be looking at recording the databases that we search, the platforms that we use, the date of the search, the strings for each of the databases, any filters, limiters, or manual methods that have been applied. And we want to keep a record of the number of records retrieved and any that were duplicated. Okay. So we have settled on our concepts, we've got our keywords, we've had a bit of a scope around to play around with our search string, and we've settled on a pattern of words that we have brought together using our Boolean terms, using brackets to focus the search and tell the program what is priority. Again, I will say this because it's the biggest thing, or means more. We don't always want more. So it can be really tempting to have, you know, or, and just loads of options. And then we just get back a load of things and it's not really the information that we're interested in, and we say, why isn't this specific enough? Okay, and that's part of the scoping process. We don't want too many ors. So try and come back down and reduce it. Which keywords bring you the best returned results, which are more on theme and which are less on theme? And again, that comes into that Excel tracking sheet. So again, to confirm, we need to search for our results. We need to deduplicate those results. We're going to screen them, we're going to appraise them, and then we're going to synthesize the information. So we've searched for our results, and now we're starting to move into the latter stage of the process. We want to manage the information. This is really best done through a citation management tool. Where we can, you know, use its pattern recognition to deduplicate the information for us, and it enables, you know, the use of folders for articles that have been approved or rejected, and you can keep track of all that numbers. So a bit of digital hygiene at this point in our chosen citation management tool really moves us forward and helps us keep track of where we're at. This is not a process that we can do in one day. It is going to take multiple hours over many days, months, weeks, years, maybe, hopefully not years, but we need to use systems, and we need to write down for ourselves notes on where we've got up to, what we're thinking, what we're doing, because despite our best efforts, come a week later you think, what was I doing? What did I do? Why did I do that? Why is that there? Note taking, very important at this stage. So when we're looking at screening our studies, initially we're going to do a title and abstract screening. So a first pass to remove any clearly irrelevant studies. You know, yes, the keywords apply, but that's not what I'm after. Next, we're going to apply the review's inclusion and exclusion criteria consistently, and we're going to move into doing that in a full text screening. So does that article meet all the criteria that we have in place? If not, get rid of it. Then we will need to make sure that we are sharing the details of the eligibility criteria in our write-up documentation, and we're going to document all the decisions and reasons for excluding, so that we are adhering to that Prisma workflow. When we're looking at the critical appraisal quality assessment of those articles, what we're looking for is to evaluate the rigour, validity, and the risk of bias in those studies. Things that we might want to use to assist in that process are, you know, in randomized controlled trials, we might have the Cochrane risk of bias 2. In observational studies, we've got the CASP or the Robbins, and in qualitative, we've got the CASP and the JBI tools. So there are systems in place, frameworks, tools, toolkits, that's the word I'm thinking of, that have been designed to support that critical evaluation. You've found the articles, you've removed all the ones that aren't applicable, but how do we evaluate that information? Go to the toolkit that is most suitable for your area, and that probably aligns with your selected framework as well. So with the write-up, with the synthesis, we can go for a descriptive or narrative synthesis, so looking at the patterns or themes that are found across all the studies. This is most appropriate where the studies are pretty heterogeneous in design, outcomes and context, which does happen. Or we might want to do a meta-analysis where we're looking to statistically pull the results from similar studies, and this increases the precision and explores the effect sizes where data are sufficiently comparable. It can happen, it does happen, but sometimes it does not. You know, sometimes people's results just aren't comparable. You know, it's annoying. Ah. The thing that we really want is to ensure good reporting and good practice. So we really want to clearly document how the review was planned, conducted and synthesized, really being clear with how we have approached this task and how we made the decisions that we did. And the checklists are a really nice visual way of working through that and looking at the numbers. So, yeah, use the reporting checklists is what I'm going to say. They do a lot of the heavy lifting for you in providing prompts on what to report, such as search methods, eligibility criteria, appraisal and synthesis, limits and implications, and they can be adapted. So, for example, now we have the Prisma scoping review workflow, which has come out, which supports that initial stage, but not so much that latter stage. What we're looking for really is finding high quality guidance. Again, this is not a old thing. This is a new emerging area. How we assess literature is constantly being updated. So make sure that you are using the most up-to-date toolkit that is available to you. So look at the Prisma website, go for the Cochrane handbook that is most recent, look at the JBI Reviewers Manual and make sure it is the most recent edition. We really want to be making sure that we're adhering to those new standards. So for example, that Prisma scoping review, it's a new process that's coming and there's some discrepancies in how scoping reviews are being reported because some people have not used that format. That could be that it came out prior to them or perhaps they were unaware of it. So do double check. Whew, I've absolutely whizzed through this. There is support available to you. Okay, you are not alone in this process, not at all. There's a lot of support available to you for developing your search strategy, selecting the databases, managing your results and referencing using the citation managers. And of course, we have sessions like this to introduce you to the concept of systematic reviews. So do get in touch with the library for more support. Okay, lovely. So we are going to recap and I'm going to hang on for a little bit if anyone wants to ask me any questions or talk about anything systematic review. Hopefully this session has been helpful to you. In the session, we aim to describe what a systematic review is and how it differs from the different review types. We've explained the main stages of the review process. We've formulated and looked at frameworks. We've identified key considerations for being transparent and reproducible. We've recognised the importance of screening, quality appraisal and data extraction. And we have looked at how to locate relevant guidance, checklists and support services through the library and other locations. Cool. That's it. That's it from me. This has been Intro to Systematic Reviews. It's a new session to me. So I would love any thoughts or feedback that you may have. What I'll do is I'll stop the recording, and if you want to have a chat, you can do, and if not, you are free to go. Thank you.